I would like to start with extending my thanks, and I would also like to say Assalamu alaikum to all the dignitaries, delegates, members of the forces, um, our chief guest, Vice Admiral, our chief guest, Admiral Shahid Karimullah Saab, DG Nima, Vice Admiral Ahmed Said Saab, and members of the business community, all others present over here. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for granting me this audience today. I will be talking about the challenges of our shipping industry from a private sector perspective and how that relates to other stakeholders. Uh, I would the area of focus of this presentation is the energy supply chain. And the reason why I have chosen this topic is because I truly believe that energy is the biggest security factor for any country, especially a country like Pakistan that is heavily dominant on and reliant on energy that is being imported. Our energy comes from crude oil, from LNG, from coal. We do have indigenous local sources that we are developing, and I hope that uh, goes on and becomes a good percentage of our energy mix. But as of today, we are a nation that imports the bulk of its energy and is reliant on imports. And that import is done through the shipping routes, through the shipping supply chain. And if we resolve those inefficiencies, some of the inefficiencies, and we are also able to capitalize on our existing shipping infrastructure, on its utilization, we can make our energy mix and our energy supply chain much better, and we can be operationally and economically efficient in managing our energy. As you already know, energy impacts all of us, from the gas in our cooking stoves, to the petrol in our car, to the gas and other sources of energy that we need to run our industries, to run our navy fleet, to run our jets, and so on and so forth. So it is a very important factor for any nation. That is the reason why I have chosen this topic. I will be giving a few examples that will show us two sides of a coin about how we are, it will show us why we are inefficient in some ways, and how, on the flip side, by taking some small measures, we can become much better and much more efficient. So, first of all, I would like to just present the impact of a inefficient energy supply chain, or the impact of high energy costs, let's say. So, there are three components to the energy supply chain, broadly speaking. One is the product. The product is imported and its price is driven by international markets. That is not something that is in our control. The second are shipping costs, which is something we can control because a lot of our energy can be transported through the Pakistan National Shipping Company and its fleet, and we can manage our shipping costs in that way. I'll come and address that point later in the presentation. The third part is the supply chain, the berths, the storages, the discharging methods, the pipelines, the connectivities. These three make up the energy supply chain, broadly speaking. So a high energy bill translates into inflation, into a current account deficit, where we face devaluation, where we face inflation because of the devaluation, and that leads us to a certain sort of debt crisis every now and then, and also encourages hoarding because there is an imminent or shortage of commodities and energy products, and that leads to a certain sector which hoards the current inventories and aggravates the situation rather than helps it. So if I talk about the oil import, I'll be focusing on two products in my presentations. I don't want to bore you too much on this Sunday morning, so I will try and keep it simple and not too dry. So I've chosen oil, and I've chosen to speak about coal to give you an insight and a holistic view about what can be done. So if we talk about oil imports, we have two ports mainly that cater to our oil imports: crude oil, furnace oil, petrol, diesel. All of this comes through Port Qasim and Karachi Port. Uh, I'll talk about Karachi Port. Karachi Port has number of berths. We have OP1, OP2, DB1, DB2. They all discharge chemical, petrochemical, and oil cargoes. So we have multiple berths over there. And most of the time, we'll find that there are idle berths at KPT for discharging oil and related products. However, the storages in KPT are slightly inefficient. They haven't been developed. The infrastructure, the pipeline connectivities has not been done over the last 10 to 15 years. Now, in contrast, if I talk about Port Qasim has very efficient storages. It is linked all the way from pipeline up to Punjab. It has multiple storages. It has a good mix of storages, but it only has one berth to discharge all oil cargoes. So you see how KPT has inefficient storage, but multiple berths, but Port Qasim has one berth and multiple storages. So the problem and the solution are sort of one and the same, in the sense that if we connect the both ports, if there was some sort of connectivity between both the ports, they could benefit of that synergy. They could benefit of that. Port Qasim does not need to make more storages, and KPT does not need to make more berths. A collaboration, a synergy, a little bit of discussions between both the ports will resolve the problem. So without spending much, we will be able to capitalize and increase the capacity utilization of the existing infrastructure. So that is a little example of how we can go about it. Just to give you a little bit more insight, there are vessels that call on Port Qasim. There is empty storages at Port Qasim available, but due to just one berth discharging one vessel at a time, we have up to 5 to 10 vessels waiting for the berth, incurring damages, sometimes to the tune of $100,000 per vessel, sometimes higher. You build up onto 10 vessels, that's $1 million. And obviously for a country that is working on its foreign exchange reserve, such a situation can be avoided, should be avoided. And there is another port which is not too far away from Port Qasim that has multiple berths. All we need to do is connect them both, so we can discharge 4, 5, 6 vessels at one time. We can store our energy, we can be more efficient. Talk about coal a little bit. We are developing third coal, and I think that is a very good initiative. That is something that should go on. It should become a bigger percentage of the overall coal mix. That will help us not be reliant on imported coal, something we should all prefer. However, the reality as of today is that in 2021, Pakistan imported 16 million tons of coal through seaborne routes. And it is expected that with the added power plant capacity and the expansion of the cement sector, this will go up to 25 million tons over the next 2 years. That 16 million tons translates to 290 vessels per annum, approximately. That's 24 vessels per month. And during proceedings of the Supreme Court in 2018, there was a decision was made where all coal imports were destined towards Port Qasim to a single purpose custom built terminal, which is fine. However, that terminal also has one berth. It can only discharge one vessel at a time. The time that that terminal was being built, Pakistan imported less than 1 million tons a year. Now we import 16 million tons a year. The capacity is not enough. The vessels, they wait outside during high traffic season, and they incur again damages up to $100,000 and $150,000 per annum, per vessel per day. I'm sorry, and that increases our import bill. And at the same time, another port, KPT, which is an hour away from Port Qasim, has idle berths lying there that can discharge coal, or a purpose-built terminal can also be developed at KPT, or some kind of railway connectivity can be done so that the discharging from the vessel onto the land and forward onto the factories is much more efficient, and we don't pay extra dollars for our energy. So if I was to sum up the gaps, if you realize both the topics that I talked about, KPT, Port Qasim, crude oil, coal, we aren't talking about any new projects that we need to do. The idea that I'm trying to float over here, I'm trying to give a dissected bird's eye view that we have the capacity within the realm. We just need to have a smarter approach. There is a concept of smart hub or smart port, which basically talks about how ports can talk to each other, how they can share data on one dashboard, and they should use that data to deploy their capital in a much more efficient manner. So in efficient capital deployment, where one port has an existing capacity which is idle and the other port is spending more money to build the same storage facility or the same discharging facility, is inefficient capital deployment. A little bit of synergy that we can build between both the ports, between the authorities, that will help them deploy their capital in a better way and also make themselves much more efficient by building those synergies between themselves. Uh, Another initiative or another drive that we need to focus on is the impact of PNSC, the Pakistan National Shipping Corporation. The Pakistan National Shipping Corporation is is a hidden gem that we must focus on. It is the only company in Pakistan that charges its freight in PKR. We don't have any other, if we want to pay for our shipping costs in Pak rupees, we don't have any other option except PNSC. So PNSC should be supported to increase its fleet so that it can cater to maximum energy import. Its focus is already on oil and crude oil imports that come into Pakistan. It should increase its fleet. We are trying to increase its fleet. We are talking about how PNSC should be allowed to procure second-hand vessels. It should be exempted from PEPRA rules so that it is able to increase its fleet, and we don't have to pay for our shipping costs in dollars. We pay for them in PKR. In fact, if we build excess capacity of PNSC fleet, PNSC will not only be able to reduce our shipping bill, it will be able to bring in foreign exchange by selling its freight and vessels to the foreign market. Also, if we are efficient and we build these synergies between our ports, we would also be able to benefit from low commodity prices. We all must remember when COVID hit, oil went down to $20, coal went down to $40. China and other countries in the region who had efficient energy supply chains, they bought commodities at very low prices, they stored them, and they benefited off them when prices were high. We've seen this same issue with us in LNG. When the prices are very high, we are unable to purchase them, and that leads to a gas crisis. So that is another thing that we need to focus on. The government's part, obviously, a little bit of activism, a little bit of synergy, sharing data, flow of information. I think platforms like NEMA are a great platform where all of these authorities, stakeholders can get together, share their views, help give a holistic view, a bird's eye view, rather than working in small pockets. We can share our information, we can share the data, and we can help spend less and become much more efficient. Also, incentivizing the private sector, and in the private sector, or I would always say that we should support local companies. PNSC is a great example of how a local company is benefiting us for the same services that we could have taken from international companies. That does not mean that we should discourage international investment or JVs, but local companies should be incentivized to build railway routes, shipping routes, terminals, ports, and multiple of those facilities, so that there is more competitiveness, and less monopolization, and the market should become more efficient automatically once there is more competition. So that would be all for me, and thank you very much for your time.